You're coming to Australia in June. Would you rather fans not give you items at the convention? You bring up a reasonable and interesting question. And I want to say, okay, so I was there in DC. I got so many wonderful things. I got some Blackwing pencils from a fan. I got, oh my gosh, one fan, they had this closure that was like a cast brass replica of an original, and what they gave me was the first time they succeeded at single point threading. I'm honored to hold on to this. I'm just going to show you a few of the highlights. That's not anything. Someone gave me their Mythos guitar pedal. Yeah. I'll figure out what those sounds do. I've got an electric guitar over at the office. Amazing. Lots of challenge coins, some Hawaiian lei beads. Look, everyone that comes to the table is so gracious and so lovely. I can't wait to see you guys in Steel City. So, to the question. Oh, right. I haven't even answered Xtafa's question. Look, stuff like that, small stuff, I totally make accommodations. I underpack my luggage when heading to a con. And when going to Australia, since I'm doing 2 cons over 2 weeks, I'm not going to bring a whole extra suitcase, but I will bring a little extra space. But let's be realistic. If you bring me a big frame picture, that's going to be really difficult for me to fly back with. But again, we actually travel with an address, a post office box, so that you can... we travel with cards, so that when people have something that might be too big, we say, here's the shipping address to ship it. And actually, Ryan Peck has a con-related question. Is there any specific con etiquette that is good to pass along? They're taking their nephew to his first con this coming weekend, and they can't wait to experience it with him. Okay. The rules around a con are around respect. If you see someone whose costume you like, the ethos is that you walk up to them and say, I really like your costume. Can I take a picture? And you let them get into their pose. They might pose with your kid or your nephew, right? They'll have a whole thing worked out, very likely. But don't just go around snapping pictures. Snapping pictures is fine, of the con and stuff like that. When you have a costume you really want to photograph, go up and ask them. Go up and tell them you're going to photograph it. Beyond that, don't touch people who can't see that you're about to touch them, get in front of them, that kind of thing. And it's like, the best part about a con is it's a sharing economy at all the levels, right? So there's just very little gatekeeping. If your nephew sees a costume that they want to make and you see someone else wearing one that's like it, a great question would be, hey, here's my nephew, where would he get started on this? Because when you have worked through a costume, Superman or a stormtrooper or whatever, you have labored over every inch of the thing. You know it really intimately. And then you understand the landscape of other versions of that costume that are out there. I'm not... It's not like there's a lot of people violating etiquette all the time. Yes, there certainly can be a problem. Cosplay does not equal consent. This is a phrase that came up a bunch of years ago at a con. If somebody is dressed in a scantily clad thing, that is not an invitation to touch them. Those sorts of things have to be spelled out on the occasion, but that's not information your nephew needs. Okay, I want to move on to this question, which I really dig, and it is from KV2049. They said a few years ago when I was newish to Tested, you talked about a Narnia sword that had been built by Weta. It baffled me that the people who worked on Middle-earth also worked on Narnia. But of course it makes sense in hindsight. What are other connections that people outside the film industry might not suspect? I'll tell you one thing is, we lost a really amazing human in Bob Burns. And he had Bob Burns is sort of industry legend. When I was a kid, there was a show called The Real Ghostbusters, which had nothing to do with the movie Ghostbusters, but it involved a gorilla in an office reading newspaper. That was Bob Burns, famously. But Bob also had this workshop where young filmmakers would come to play. And these young filmmakers were people like George Lucas and James Cameron and George Lucas's effects director, the really tall one. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on this right now. I know you're all yelling it at the screen right now. 8 Academy Awards.
Dennis Muren.
What's that? Dennis Muren. Yeah, Dennis Muren. That's, I know. It's so obvious. How could you not remember Dennis Muren? So Lucas, Dennis Muren, Peter Jackson, Jim Cameron, these guys would all go to Bob Burns' shop and like make models together. But the one I wanted to tell you about was if you're a Simpsons fan and you've watched the old seasons, you've probably come across an amazing voice actor who played among many, many, many characters, he played Troy McClure. On Futurama, he played Zach Brannigan. His name was Phil Hartman, and he was a Saturday Night Live alum and a absolutely genius, brilliant, vocal, physical comedian. What you don't know is that in the 70s, Phil Hartman was a really important album designer, album cover designer. It's hard to overstate how important the 12-ish square inch area of a record album really was at its peak. But this was a major cultural frame. People did all sorts of amazing stuff with that frame. And they pushed it and they pulled it and they changed what people thought of graphic design. And Phil Hartman was one of those, doing albums for like Jefferson Starship and things like that. So I always love, obviously possessing a very strange and peripatetic career that has wound a lot. I'm a big fan of those careers that have wrinkles and buckles to them that I didn't expect. And within the frame of graphic design, I was recently looking at, I was recently going down a YouTube rabbit hole listening to Karen Carpenter singing. I found a sound engineer who had 2 recordings of Karen Carpenter singing a song 4 years apart, and he overlaid them. And for many of the notes, you cannot hear 2 voices. That's how tightly Karen Carpenter would hit the perfect note. But then I was also noticing the Carpenters logo. And if you haven't seen it, the Carpenters had this amazing, amazing graphic design logo. And this is like the soul of the 70s, 60s, and 50s, where logo types were not just like, this was hand done. This isn't Letraset. This is somebody who like worked this out, designed it, cut it out, came up with a framework for it and built it. And I'll tell you who this was. So I was looking at this and thinking, God, I love typographic design like this. This is hard stuff to do. It is really impressive. And I thought, well, who did it? And I looked him up. And his name is actually a really important album designer called Craig Braun, and his graphic design company. Oh, and by the way, so Craig Braun designed this with, hang on, Walter Velez, the illustrator Walter Velez and Craig Braun, both designed this logo. And he also went on, Braun Associates did Sticky Fingers, the zipper, the Rolling Stones album with the fly you could open, the tongue, the Andy Warhol banana, like crazy. I had no idea that the person who designed the Carpenters logo did that, but I think I've already given off the surprise because Craig Braun is actually the father of Nicholas Braun, otherwise known as Cousin Greg from Succession. I love that. It also turns out that Craig Braun went on in his later life. I don't think he's dead, but he went on in his later career and also became an actor. Again, marvelous, weird careers. I really dig that. Thank you for watching. I wanted to talk to you about Tested membership. The Tested members are a key community that we find really, really remarkable. That's very separate from Tested and from YouTube. The Tested members, they buy each other memberships during our live streams. So if you're wondering whether to become a member, watch one of our live streams and someone may just give you one. It is hard to overestimate how much the tested members actually make possible on this channel. They give us a lot of wiggle room. They give us a huge amount of feedback.
That's a member right now.
Thank you so much for enjoying your membership. Description for everything you need to know. And for all the members out there, thank you, thank you, thank you.